Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today I've got a fabulous returning guest. He's one of my favourites. His name is Terraine LeBeau. He's got his own The Behind the Shades Show podcast, which is a fantastic show. Please tune in if you get the chance. And today we're going to be talking about a very controversial topic about how woke culture is impacting women and children's health and safety. So welcome, Terraine.
Hello, Lyn. Thank you so much for having me back on your fantastic show. It is a pleasure to be here.
And certainly, I think this is a very interesting, hot topic, isn't it? We've had a bit of a discussion off air around this, and I think it's going to make a fascinating conversation for people to listen into. And I suppose the first thing is for people that might be listening to understand what is woke, because maybe some people might not have even heard of what woke is or don't have an understanding of what woke is. So what would be your understanding, Terraine, around how to explain what that is?
Yeah, so for me, woke means like you're awoken to something. So it could be, let's say, you're aware that women need more protection in certain areas, or men need more access in other areas, or children need more guidance in one area. So woke to me just means that what is something that we want to push to the mainstream and have them aware of it. But unfortunately, it seems these days it seems to be aligned with certain ideologies that in a lot of ways are counterproductive to the progression of society.
Yeah, I would say it's having a massive negative impact. And I'm really actually quite shocked as to what I'm seeing in terms of how this woke ideology is impacting not only women, but our children, and how it's infiltrating through schools and education and what have you, to the point where, I'm really very concerned about the generations growing up at the moment. And an example, I suppose, currently for those that are unaware about what we're talking about is how men are now being able to identify as women without actually having gone through any sort of transition medically, just by saying that's what they identify with.
That is a little bit tough, because I think from the perspective of a woman's space, let's say like athletics, right? Let's say sports. And maybe it's going to put some people at a disadvantage in their perspective, because they're looking at it as, well, you have the biological man who is now identified as a woman, and this person is competing against us who are always a woman all this time. So they may feel like it's a little bit difficulty. We had that recently with the Olympics, with a boxer there's some controversy. Is this person a man biologically, where they're born that way, or they're a woman? And people are all up in arms because one Olympic committee said this person is a man, another one said no, you guys are corrupt, the person isn't a man, there's a woman. So I think what needs to be done is, if you want to be inclusive, with I think we both can agree, how can we best do that, right? And I think the best way to do it is take it from a perspective, you want to protect everyone involved. So maybe 3 categories is the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you wouldn't get able-bodied people able to compete in the Paralympics, for example, because it wouldn't meet that criteria, and to actually say, just because you're identifying as a man, that you should be able to compete in women's sports, when you've got physically, it's been proven, at least, I don't know, it's different across different sports, but on average between 10 and 15% extra physical capacity more than the average woman is not a fair playing field, is it?
Yeah, that is, it's difficult. I remember there was like it was in the States somewhere, where you had I think it was trans women and they were breaking like all the high school and college records, and then like you had people who were unable to get scholarships and things like that. So there's like a direct impact to that demographic in that area. And I couldn't imagine being in that situation where you work that hard and then you feel that someone has taken it away from you because of something that they chose to do later on in life instead of working their way up to it, like some of these other people that's involved. So it is truly heartbreaking to see.
And not only that, but you find that, especially in, like you said, the sports arena, it's predominantly been seen whereby, that person has previously competed as a male, but not been very successful. But all of a sudden, now because they identify as a female, they are winning races. And oh, isn't that a surprise?
Yeah, yeah. There was a power lifter. He was a man his entire life, and then he identified as a woman, competed, beat everyone, broke all the records, and then afterwards he went back to identify as a man. So it was kind of funny to see, right? But he did it to prove a point, and the point was proven that if you're going to allow this type of behavior, then you want to regulate it better. You don't want someone to kind of quote unquote make a joke of it like he did, because he only did it to prove a point, and now he was a good power lifter before, but he wanted to prove a point, and I think everyone got the point.
Well, that's great. I love him for that, because I believe, there needs to be some common sense around this. If you can identify, I mean, Piers Morgan, one of our journalists, made me laugh because he says, all right, I'm going to identify, and he's a white guy, middle class guy. He says, I'm going to identify as a black lesbian then. He says, why can't I identify as a black lesbian? And, the woke person that was on his show said, well, you're being ridiculous. But she, in my opinion, opened that ridiculous door because men aren't women.
It's funny that I remember watching that. It's funny that when he said it, they don't want him to be able to do it, but then they want him to accept everyone else doing it. And I love that he chose that only because he took like two disenfranchised group. He just took three: black, women, lesbian, right? From a white heterosexual man.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they didn't want any part of that, right? But if you're gonna say that, okay, all you have to do is say you're this and say you're that, then you have to accept it across the board. And I wonder if someone were to come out and say, I am disabled now, right? Let me compete in the Special Olympics. Would they accept that?
Or, as a 6 foot tall person, I'm going to compete in the dwarf Olympics or something like that. Because I'm now identifying as a dwarf. When
Yeah,
you
yeah.
stop, it gets ridiculous, doesn't it?
It does. It does. I remember reading there's a report that came out and they're saying that like women are less paid and they're struggling, and there's less women in the C suites, like the CEOs, the COs and CFOs and things like that, right? And when you look at these numbers, like for example, like white women where they had more people in these high-end jobs than all other than black and men combined, right? But then they lump the women in there to kind of manipulate the stats and say, well, it's all women going through this, even though it's only one section of women. So similar to like this topic about woke, it's you have a small group of people who are struggling, who need help, who need attention, but the way they're doing it, they're spreading it across, making it seem like they're the vast majority that is going through this thing, instead of saying that, okay, how can we accommodate a minority of people in the best way possible while still finding a balance for the majority? And I think that's what's missing.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And it's not only about, I would say that unfortunately, when woke people are challenged on this, they then say that we're not being inclusive and we're not about equality, but that's far from the truth. It is about being inclusive and wanting equality, but by trying to make it fair to their very small minority group, they're actually discriminating against the majority, aren't they, themselves?
Yes, and one thing you want to do is ask them, but this is what I do anyways. What does equality look like to you, and what does inclusiveness look like to you? And then there's some people you realize that equality to them is to punish everybody else. So, for example, let's say someone wants to be inclusive with me, who identifies as a black man, right? They say that, well, since you're a black man, Terraine, we're going to say that you've been impacted negatively because of that. Fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to penalize all white men to accommodate you. I'm like, no, that's not what I want. What I want is provide an opportunity for everyone to be successful in the way that they define success across the board. Like that is inclusive, that is equal. But it seems that a lot of people who are woke, they're saying that no, we need to punish those who have quote unquote the power, those who are quote unquote the ruling class, to make other people feel better or appear to be better. And when you do that, you create division, because there's some people who are literally saying that, hey, I'm actually an ally. I actually want to be inclusive. I think Lynn should have all the opportunities that I have. I think someone who identifies as a man, a woman, trans woman, I think we should all be inclusive. But if you're going to penalize me, what incentive are you providing for me to remain an ally? And I think that's where you have so many people who are providing a backlash, because you're saying that those who are an ally or on the fence, you're lumping them in with the bigots, the white supremacists, the misogynistics, and then they're like, okay, if you're going to label me as such, I might as well behave as such.
Yeah, great point, Terraine. Great point. And the other side of the coin is, of course, it's not just about the unfairness in like sports in particular, but also women having their private spaces invaded, such as the locker rooms, toilet facilities. You know, even now, men claiming they want to be part of a breastfeeding group and do some chest feeding. You know, what's that all about?
I didn't know there's biological men that can lactate. That escapes me. You know, maybe that's a kink.
Well, I think apparently, from what I heard recently, there for those women that, for example, can't have children biologically and adopt babies, there is a way to treat women to help them to lactate as a woman as though they have given birth. Apparently, when I've only been recently educated about this, and so men want to be able to do the same. And although they can produce some sort of substance, it's yet to be proven as to whether it'd be healthy or right or even you know beneficial for any baby. So you know, I think it is going to attract those men that are kinky and you know, just want to be in a room full of women that are breastfeeding, to be honest with you. And I think that's totally unacceptable.
Well, thank the good Lord I was raised by my grandmother and I wasn't breastfed, because I have no experience in what that feels like. But I do know men, and I guess women, who it's a kink. Like they, even in their adulthood, they engage in that, right? But if people, I guess my point of view, if you're not really hurting someone, should it be okay? Yes, to a degree. When it comes to the spaces that women and men hold separately, there was a beautiful article that was written that I read. It was in an interview that I read, and the person asked the question, in general, men usually don't want to be in a woman's washroom. And in general, women don't want to be in a woman's washroom. Like when the average man or woman accidentally goes into the opposite sex washroom, they're very embarrassed, very ashamed, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. And they leave immediately, right? So if that is across the board a natural response, if someone would enter the washroom of the opposite sex and they want to stay, what does that say about their state of mind at that point, right? And I think that needs to be examined, because why would someone want to be in a place where everyone else is uncomfortable, right? There's that old saying, right? You go where you're wanted, not where you're tolerated. So why would someone want to purposely be in a space where everyone is uncomfortable, everyone is telling them, hey, maybe you shouldn't be here, and they're going to stay and interact in a place that they don't necessarily are welcomed? So I think from a mental perspective, sorry, from a mindset perspective, I think that needs to be examined. But I always wonder that, you know, it reminds me of that Planet Fitness where the woman walked into the washroom, there was a man shaving in the woman's washroom, and the woman said, hey, you can't be here. And the man's like, no, you know, I identify as a woman, as he's shaving his beard, which is thicker and longer than mine, right? And she took a picture and a video to show it to the staff. You know what happened to her, Lynn? They canceled her membership and they allowed that person to stay, and you continue to use the woman's washroom. So I think there has to be some more investigation and some more understanding, saying, hey, is this what we really want, or is a third bathroom an option? Because I think that's probably the better course of action.
Yes, most definitely, because we have accessibility to provide provision for disabled people, so that is an option where there could be, and again, another option for people that aren't fully biologically women to actually use another facility. And I think that would be the best, and the most common sense. I suppose, what's the word I'm trying to come up with? Solution. That's it, to that issue.
Let me ask you a question. Have you been inside a non-gender washroom?
No, I haven't, but I have seen that when they have tried to introduce sort of the option in, say, high schools, for example, which I'm totally against, because that's when girls are going through puberty, boys are going through puberty, hormones are raging, and there has been problems where there's been unisex bathrooms introduced where girls have been assaulted, and then they've had to change their policy around that. But why does it have to come to women and girls being assaulted before these loopholes are closed? Isn't it just common sense?
Yes, you'll have someone that will take advantage of the system like anything else. And I asked that because I went into a non-gender washroom before, and the interaction is definitely different. And for me, and this could have just been my perspective, you see how some people are comfortable because some people literally, Lynn was walking in there to observe what it looks like. Like curiosity overcame them, right? But when you're, at least for me, I was growing up, and most of the time when I go to the washroom and it's a men's washroom, majority of the time people are standing up unless they have to do number two, as they would say, right?
Yeah.
So to go in there, now this is for you to visualize this. For you, go in there and you see someone that looks like you, talks like you, moves like you, and they're standing up to use the washroom, right? It's a little bit shocking, something you have to get used to. So it's in the news, it seems to be always the other way. Like it always seems to be happening in the women's washroom. But I wonder how many trans men who used to be women are interacting in the male's washroom like that. And maybe they are, they just go on their way, like it's no one's business. But it seems like when it goes the other way, it makes more news just because it's more obvious. And I think that's where the concern is for women, because you have young girls that are a little bit more vulnerable than young boys. And you have some people, unfortunately, that are going to take advantage, and some have. And I think that's the scary part.
Yeah, and the thing is that you'll always, when there's a way of creating loopholes like this, there are always going to be people that take advantage. And I think even there is a strong contingency of even the LBG, I can't pronounce all the letters of the alphabet.
LGBTIA plus community. You gotta
Yes,
practice it, Lynn. You
exactly.
gotta practice it.
And within that, the trans community, there is a lot of people within those communities themselves that are actually against this woke ideology, that think it's wrong, for example, to start, giving our teenagers. I mean, I can remember as a teenager, I was a tomboy, and quite often thought, boys and men had a better end of the deal in life than girls and women. And, I could have probably easily, if given the right environment, probably talked into maybe thinking I should be a boy. And it's just horrifies me to think that, some people who are just gender confused or just going through a phase of being a bit of a tomboy, during their adolescence and pubescent period of their life could be harmed by, or indoctrinated into this ideology of thinking they're the opposite sex, and then go through literally puberty blockers and even mutilation of the genitals and breasts and things like that. I'm just horrified that this is actually going on.
Body dysmorphia is a very real thing, and a lot of people do suffer from it. When it comes to like the changing of the body, like removing parts and things like that. My question when I read about that, hear about it, and watch it is, would it be better to allow them to at least reach the age of adulthood as defined by the state, the country, whatever, and then have them make that decision just because there's a certain age limit for people to drive, drink, get married,
Have
vote,
sex.
have sex, right? So if you're going to do something that in a lot of ways is life altering, why not wait? Because studies have come out and shown that there's some people that eventually grow out of it. As you mentioned, like some people are tomboys, tomgirls. Some people may be more attuned to their masculine side growing up versus those who are maybe attuned to their feminine side. So there isn't anything necessarily wrong growing up that way, but when you put someone in a situation to make a life altering decision and they make it and then they regret it afterwards, what do you do with those people, right? Like you rather have someone say, okay, I've done this for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Let me speak to a therapist, whomever, to guide them accordingly, and then say, hey, you're 19 years old. Is this still something that you want to do because you are now considered an adult in the country? Yes, Terraine is something perfect. Then go ahead, right? But when you have 8-year-olds, 10, 9-year-olds, I wonder how much of that is being influenced by social media and those around them who are saying that yes, 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 instead of having a conversation, be like, okay, let's give it some time and go from there.
Exactly, because I worked with all ages of children as part of my career growing up and going through my work life. Right from preschool children to primary school to secondary school to adult education, and you could tell even at preschool age, you got effeminate boys, for example, and you thought, well, maybe he'll grow up and he'll be a gay effeminate man, and you probably speak to them 10 years later and find that, yes, that's exactly who he is. But, you don't want him then to be targeted at that age and changed into a girl, because he probably would have been happy, enough in his self to feel comfortable that, oh, actually, I'm just a effeminate gay man and I'm happy just being an effeminate gay man, not changing into the opposite sex.
Give them the tools to understand what they're going through and to work through it, right? But you don't want to push them, right? I've seen enough interviews with therapists and stuff like that. It's to guide people to come to a conclusion on their own. It's not to say, hey, you are this, so do this, right? So that is the point of guiding someone along, because if we go into a situation with an agenda or prophecy that we can self-fulfill, we'll self-fulfill that prophecy and agenda every single time. It's like someone walking up and saying that I'm going to have a car accident today. So you're going to subconsciously find ways to have a car accident so you self-fulfill that prophecy or that agenda or that goal. So when someone comes into your office, you're saying that, okay, I think that anyone that exhibits any man that exhibits any feminine quality needs to do this. So now you gotta look for it. Okay, Mr. John Smith, how are you today? How are your feelings? Well, I feel, I feel kind of emotional right now. Aha! I got you. Let me get out my pad. Let me write this up, right? So I wonder how much of it is that and how much of it is genuine care, because guide the person along. And I've spoken to therapists, coaches, and things like that, and that has always been the stance. It's just unfortunately when you have money involved, when you have politics involved in areas that it shouldn't be involved, it definitely does influence one's decision.
Yeah, you've raised a really good point there. And also, you have unscrupulous surgeons who are just experimenting on these people as guinea pigs, and with horrific results that are coming out now.
Yes, yes. I think there was I forget where I saw it, but there is people who are looking to transition back to what their previous sex was, or gender, well, sex was, and they're having some difficulty. It's something that I think is here to stay, and I think awareness is the best course of action. I'm just concerned with what solution are you going to come up with, because this isn't something that we can learn as we go along, because some people's lives are being negatively impacted while others have been positively. But I always look at things as, when you provide a solution to something, the upside is the upside. People are happy. But the downside, like how far down is that downside? How of a negative impact is that downside? It's like someone saying that I'm going to give you this pill and this pill is going to make you feel better. Okay, for some people it feels better. But then you have another group of people whose lives are ruining and they're end up dying. Like, is that the balance that you want? Like, if you don't have that pill, will those people who are good because of the pill, will they still be okay and you have less death? Or is the number of deaths a way to justify, okay, we're expecting people to die because so many other people are good? I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's something that needs to be considered.
Yes, yeah, totally aligned with that, 100%. And I feel like, it's just I'm just thinking, what's going to be the case in 5, 10, 15 years time when the results of all this behind the scenes stuff that's not so behind the scenes stuff actually starts being mainstream in our faces as to what the results are from these unscrupulous surgeons and doctors that have, helped these people supposedly transition when perhaps it wasn't necessary and it wasn't actually, them in a position where they could make that decision because they weren't emotionally old enough or mature enough or wise enough or aware enough or been given the options to understand what the side effects or the downsides would be when they had made these life-changing decisions.
Well, we've seen some of that just in our lifetime. Like if you think about when this started to gain a lot of momentum, it was less than 10 years ago. Since it's our lifetime, Lynn. I see after us, it's going to be in full swing, but we're going to see a larger impact before you and I leave this earth. For example, look at all the companies that's been influenced by it, right? Like we touched on like Bud Light and what they went through their backlash when they had someone that identified as a woman and they were biologically a man, right? So you have areas where it's being impacted. Like I know Disney's another one where they're making a number of movies and they're highlighting these things and there's a lot of backlash and they've lost money. They continue to double down on it. So I think we're going to see further and further. But there was an article written by Zito, I think his last name, in the National Post, where his generation, he's a little bit older, and his generation, what they wanted initially with the whole Pride movement was they just wanted basically certain rights that heterosexuals got. So ultimately, when they won the right to get married, like everyone else, and they're on equal playing field, a lot of them who are, let's say, at that time in their late 40s, 50s, 60s, they're like, okay, we have everything that we believe that we wanted, and we think and believe that we're equal to those who are heterosexual. So they stopped. So in the meantime, now you had a newer generation of people that are saying that no, we want this, and this, and they became more radicalized because of it, because now their numbers were a little bit smaller, so they had to make their voices even louder. And I think what has happened here is that you have people saying that we want this, we want that, but they're going to the companies and they're putting pressure on the companies. So now the companies are saying that, okay, we're going to do this. And as they're doing it, they're forgetting their prime demographic, saying that, hey, how come my Disney Plus has changed?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
How come I see this image on Bud Light? How come I see these things going on? Like this is not necessarily something that we want to engage with because you're part of the entertainment, and part of entertainment is that after a hard day at the office or at work, I want to come home and relax. I don't want you to grab the newspaper and hit me over the head a couple of times and say, hey, you bad boy, hey, bad girl. You need to start doing these things because the way that you're living your life in peace, harmony for the last 20, 30, 40 years is actually wrong. And we're telling you that it's wrong, even though you look around, you're like, wait a minute. I'm a good citizen. I pay my taxes. I treat people with respect. Now you're asking me to do a lot more, and no matter what I try to do, you still tell me that it's wrong. And I think that's where a lot of people just turn off by it, and that's why you see the support continue to dip. And people are like, you know what? These things in the schools, these things with the gender changing stuff like that, we don't support that because you've alienated us.
And I'm glad that's happening because, otherwise, can you imagine, well, the repercussions are still going to be unfolding, like you say, and it has been during still our lifetime as we're seeing and talking about it now, to the extent where, over here, I don't know whether you heard, we had a guy that just said he identified as a woman and he got a previous criminal history of rape his ex-wife even said he was scamming, but still, because he said he was a woman, he went to women's prison, and then, of course, committed a crime again against vulnerable women in prison. So, I mean, how stupid of a system have we got that a man could get away with doing that in today's supposedly, intelligent society? It just doesn't make sense to me. A lot of people lost all common sense? Has that just literally left our bodies with some people?
Well, that's always the test, right? The test is always prison and war. So like you look at like Russia and Ukraine, right? All those people that said that all the women who identify as he him, for example, right? When the war broke out and they said that all the people who identify as a man have to fight the war, how many of them went back and said, "Oh no, 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 I'm a she her." Like no, you got to fight, right? Like that's the ultimate test is war and prison because all the people who would identify all the women who identify as a man, do you really think that they would go into a male prison with female parts? Probably not, right? Same thing with war. So it's interesting to see that person said that he was a woman and then he went in a woman's prison and then started to have his way with everyone in the prison. It's kind of strange.
Honestly, it caused uproar and a lot of heads rolled, but I'm glad it happened. But why should it have to get to that stage before common sense prevails, is my argument. Why do women, in other words, and it's usually the majority, that it is women that get hurt as well as our children in these scenarios. Why does it have to be that somebody has to get hurt before we realize there's a big loophole that needs to be closed here?
Well, I wonder in that case, so what do they end up doing? Do they put that person in a male prison or do they just put them in protective custody or something like that because they're there?
I think prior to this, like you said, there are third spaces for, like you said, the LGBTQ plus whatever letters of the alphabet. Sorry for those people that are listening that resonate with that community, but I can never remember all the letters genuinely. So I apologize in advance. But they do have their own sections within prisons.
Yes, I think going forward, if we can if we can soothe everyone and the compromise, and this is just, in me and my small brain in my little country over here, I just think that if you truly want to find a balance, that is the best option because when women became independent enough to get certain rights and freedoms that wasn't accustomed to them many centuries ago, right? Instead of having a sport for everybody, they said, hey, women and men are actually different from a physical makeup, all this from just their bodies, right? So they said that we need to separate it because if you're going to have men and women competing in the same category, women will never place. So to protect women and to give them an area where they can compete and be successful, they separated because they understood the need. I think we need to get there with this as well, saying that, okay, we want to make sure that we're accommodating to this group of people, we understand it, and you have a separate category because that way you have them competing amongst each other, and whoever's the best is the best, right? And I think from like a social aspect, if you have a third washroom or a third area, a third change room, third whatever, you have a space for them as well. Like the gym is the gym, for example. You have everyone there. Who cares what you are, right? But when it comes to where you're going to be changing your clothes and things of that nature, you have a third area. You're accommodating everyone, and it's an equal balance across the board.
Thank you for that, Terraine. And on that note, on that common sense solution, which seems like, hopefully we're heading towards, fingers crossed. What is your best way for our audience members to connect with you, Terraine?
Absolutely. So the best way to contact me is on my website, which is www.behindtheshades.ca. Everything is there from my mentorship to my coaching to things I can help you with, as well as links to my social media is there as well. And look at it as a landing page because I want to make sure that everyone is set up for success. And that is not only a passion of mine, it is my life journey.
Thank you so much, Terraine. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I feel better now that I've got a few of those things off my chest because it is one of those things that, I've got strong opinions about. And I'm just wondering, as I say, when is the common sense going to kick in and protect, the most vulnerable people in our society, especially women and children, when it comes to these issues?
Yes, we need to make sure that everyone is provided equal opportunity to be successful, as well as share some equity amongst those who may need it the most.
Excellent. Thank you for your final words there. So it just leaves me to say that true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.